Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a true masterpiece of psychological suspense. Today, we're going to explore the anatomy of a deeply flawed crime by tracking the harrowing descent of Rodion Raskolnikov, the unforgettable protagonist of Fyodor Dostoevsky's brilliant novel, Crime and Punishment. Throughout this Explainer, we'll unpack Dostoevsky's timeless warning about the profound dangers of intellectual vanity and uncover the true, devastating cost of committing an atrocious act. It's a story that asks a genuinely terrifying question. What actually happens when a person truly believes they're above the moral laws that govern the rest of us?
730. In the very first chapter of our source material, this isn't just some random figure. It is exactly 730 steps. That is the precise distance from Raskolnikov's cramped cupboard-like garret to the apartment of an elderly pawnbroker named Alyona Ivanovna. And he isn't just going for an evening stroll here. Every single one of those 730 steps is part of a chilling, calculated rehearsal for murder. You see, he honestly believes his intellect sets him completely apart from ordinary people, and that pure logic alone can justify something atrocious. But, as we'll see as we unpack this, human psychology simply doesn't work like math.
Section 1. The Anatomy of Desperation, or as it's perfectly subtitled here, the pressure cooker. Okay, let's dive into this. We really have to establish the suffocating environment that is actively corroding Raskolnikov's sanity right from Chapter 1.
He is totally, completely backed into a corner. Dostoevsky builds this incredibly suffocating atmosphere in St. Petersburg. You've got the stifling July heat just pressing down on him. There's the constant, overwhelming stench of the taverns. He is trapped in extreme poverty and total social isolation. But the real match in the powder barrel? It's a letter from his mother. She reveals the massive sacrifices his family is making just to keep him afloat. Specifically, his sister Dunya's proposed marriage to a mercenary, terrible guy named Luzhin. When you rapidly stack all these elements together, you see a man being physically and emotionally crushed by his circumstances.
And this brings us to a pivotal encounter. While Raskolnikov is under this immense pressure, he meets a destitute ex-clerk named Marmeladov in a filthy tavern, getting a first-hand look at the absolute rock bottom of human misery. Just let this harrowing quote from Marmeladov sit with you for a second. Do you understand what it means when you have absolutely nowhere to turn? It's a gut punch, right? It perfectly captures the profound desperation Raskolnikov himself is feeling, setting the stage for a truly disastrous train of thought. Which brings us to Section 2, a dangerous justification, the delusion. Driven by this insane desperation and, frankly, his own ideological vanity, Raskolnikov convinces himself that killing this abusive pawnbroker isn't actually a crime at all. He adopts this highly specific, twisted version of utilitarianism. In his mind, he's simply achieving a net good for society by removing a harmful element. He's literally treating human life and morality like an algebra equation. Subtract one abusive pawnbroker, add the benefit of her hoarded wealth being distributed to the needy, and boom, the result is a positive sum. And this brilliantly illustrates the central conflict set up by Dostoevsky. On one side, you have Raskolnikov's logic. He thinks the act will be calculated, noble, and precise. Because of his intellect, he's above it all. But on the other side, Dostoevsky presents the harsh reality. Human psychology just does not work like math. You simply cannot neatly calculate the emotional and psychological toll of ending a human life.
Section 3, the subconscious rebellion, the warning. So we get to Chapter 5, and before he ever even swings the axe, Raskolnikov's innate morality violently revolts against his own calculated ideas. It happens in the form of a brutal, terrifying nightmare. In this dream, he's a young boy again, standing by helplessly as he watches a group of drunk, brutal peasants beat an old, overworked mare to death. It is a fast, disjointed, absolutely horrific sequence packed with visceral sensory details that mirror his subconscious rebellion. He snaps awake from this nightmare completely drenched in sweat, utterly horrified by the mere thought of blood and violence. Now, this is a massive tell. Actually, scratch that. It's a glaring red flag. This dream exposes the fundamental flaw in his entire plan. He isn't the cold, calculated utilitarian he thinks he is. His human empathy is alive, and it's screaming at him to stop. Yet despite this blaring internal alarm system, an external coincidence pushes him right over the edge. By pure, grim irony, Raskolnikov has a chance encounter in the Haymarket where he overhears a conversation. He learns that the pawnbroker will be entirely alone at exactly 7 o'clock the next evening. This tiny piece of information acts like a magnet. It seals his resolve, and he suddenly feels drawn toward committing the act, as if he's been completely stripped of his own free will. Moving into section 4, the chaotic reality, the climax. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly it captures the brutal collision of his abstract theory with messy reality as the entire heist unravels. Because when the actual moment arrives, absolutely everything goes wrong. Let's walk through this tragically botched execution. First off, he isn't calm. His hands are trembling uncontrollably. Second, his supposedly superior intellect completely fails him. He forgets basic, critical details of his own plan. And then, the ultimate unpredictable variable enters the equation. Lizaveta, the gentle, totally innocent sister of the pawnbroker, walks right into the apartment. To cover his tracks, he's forced to murder her too. In a single instant, any delusion that his crime was noble, precise, or some kind of net good for society is completely shattered by the blood of an innocent person. Finally, Section 5, the psychological fallout, the resolution.
We shift our focus to the immediate aftermath. And spoiler alert, it is not a triumph of his intellect. It is a complete and utter physiological and mental collapse. Raskolnikov is struck by sudden physical illness and a raging fever. He's consumed by this blind, paranoid terror. And then, in a moment of incredibly grim irony, he gets summoned to the police station the very next day. It's actually over a completely unrelated debt to his landlady, but while he's there, he overhears the officers casually discussing the brutal murders of the pawnbroker and her sister. The sheer psychological weight of hearing his crimes spoken out loud causes him to literally faint dead away right there in the station.
So, the crucial point is Dostoevsky's central thesis shining through loud and clear. You cannot commit an unnatural act and expect your mind to remain unaffected. It conclusively proves that cold, detached logic simply cannot survive the crushing weight of an atrocity. The human mind is not a ledger book where you can just casually balance out murder with some theoretical social good. To wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Imagine putting yourself in that cramped St. Petersburg garret. If you were backed into a corner, suffocating under extreme desperation, and you somehow decided to strip away all the moral rules of society, could your own mind actually survive the consequences of your actions? Dostoevsky's warning about intellectual vanity echoes just as loudly today as it did when Raskolnikov took those 730 steps. Thank you so much for joining me as we unraveled the anatomy of this brilliantly flawed crime.